He does not growl when you arrive. That is the first thing the ancient sources want you to understand. When the newly dead crossed the river and passed through the gates, Cerberus, the great hound, the three-headed guardian, the creature whose name has echoed through 3,000 years of human imagination, wagged his tails. He turned each of his 3 heads toward you with something that looked in the dimness like welcome. "Come in," his posture said. "You belong here now." But Hesiod, who first recorded his nature in the 8th century BCE, is precise about what that welcome meant. He fawns on those who enter. He is warm, even gentle on arrival, and then he eats whoever he catches trying to go back out. The warmth was not kindness. It was a trap. His bodies filled the gate mouth. His heads, 3 of them, each capable of independent attention, independent fury, tracked every direction at once. No shadow moved without his notice. No whisper of intention escaped him. The dead pressed together at the river's edge, unable to return, and Cerberus stood between them and every escape they might imagine, waiting for one of them to try. He was not merely a monster placed there to guard a door. He was the door. Welcome to Aeonkeep, where the ancient legends live. Today, Cerberus, the 3-headed hound of Hades, guardian of the boundary between the living and the dead, his origins, his nature, and the 3 extraordinary times in all of Greek mythology that a living soul got past him. The Greeks understood death architecturally. The Underworld was not a vague spiritual afterlife, but a structured realm with geography, governance, and bureaucracy. It had rivers, the Styx, the Lethe, the Acheron, each with a specific function. It had a ferryman, it had judges, it had distinct regions, the Elysian fields for the heroic dead, the asphodel meadows for the ordinary, Tartarus for the condemned, and it had a guardian. The Greeks told Cerberus's story across centuries and across sources, in Hesiod's Theogony, in the Iliad and Odyssey, in Pindar's Odes, in Apollodorus's Bibliotheca, in Virgil's Aeneid, which, though Roman, drew deeply from Greek tradition, and in the fragments of poets whose full works are lost to us. Each source gives him slightly different features, slightly different emphases. What they share is the essential function. The Underworld is not simply a place you go. It is a place you cannot leave. Cerberus is the reason. To understand Cerberus is to understand what death meant to the Greeks. Not punishment, not judgment in the Christian sense, but transformation into something permanent. The boundary mattered because permanence mattered. Cerberus is the creature who makes death mean something. Before there was Cerberus, there was the marriage at the edge of the world. Hesiod, writing in the 8th century BCE, gives us the family. Typhon, the last and most terrible monster the earth produced, a creature of such primordial violence that even the Olympian gods fled from him, took as his mate Echidna, the half-woman, half-serpent who dwelt in a cave beneath the earth and never aged and never died. From this union came the most dangerous creatures in all of Greek mythology: the Lernaean Hydra, the Nemean lion, the Sphinx, the Colchian dragon who guarded the Golden Fleece, and Cerberus, called by Hesiod the brazen-voiced hound of Hades, 50-headed in Hesiod's original account, a detail that later tradition would reduce and regularize, settling on 3 heads as the canonical form. 3 heads became standard because 3, to the Greeks, was a number of completion, past, present, and future, the 3 fates, the 3-way crossroads where Hecate stood. A 3-headed guardian watched all directions in time as well as space. Nothing approached without being seen. Nothing had ever happened that he did not remember. His tail, in many tellings, was a serpent. His mane, in some, was made of serpents. He stood at the innermost gate of Hades, at the boundary beyond which even the dead could not pass back. The newly dead moved through him on arrival. His fawning welcome received them. And then the gate, in every sense that mattered, closed behind them. He was not a predator in the way of hunting animals. He was a threshold with teeth. Only 3 times in all of the ancient sources did a living being get past him. The first time, the weapon was music. Orpheus, the poet and musician of Thrace, the man whose singing could move rivers and make stones weep, descended into the underworld to retrieve his wife Eurydice, who had died from a snake's bite. In Virgil's Georgics, she was bitten while fleeing the unwanted pursuit of the shepherd Aristaeus. In Ovid's Metamorphoses, she was simply walking among the naiads when the serpent found her. The versions disagree on the cause. They agree on the loss. Orpheus carried no weapons. He brought his lyre. When he reached Cerberus and played, the hound's 3 heads went still. The serpents in his mane grew calm. His eyes, each pair independently ancient with vigilance, grew heavy. Orpheus moved past him into the interior courts of Hades and played his grief directly to the god himself. It is the only moment in Greek mythology when the underworld wept. Even the Furies paused in their work. Even the burning wheel of Ixion stopped turning. Cerberus, in this tradition drawn from Ovid's Metamorphoses and the earlier Greek lyric sources, was not defeated. He was moved. Music reached something in him that force could not have touched. He was overwhelmed, not overcome. The second time the weapon was honey. The Cumaean Sibyl, the prophetess who served as guide to Aeneas in Virgil's Aeneid, brought into the underworld a cake of honey mixed with grain and soporific herbs. When Cerberus lunged, she threw it to him. He swallowed it. All 3 heads went down, and Aeneas and the Sibyl stepped past the sleeping hound into the realm beyond. This is the Roman telling, drawn from Virgil rather than earlier Greek sources, and it has a different character from the Orpheus episode. Where Orpheus moved the hound with beauty, the Sibyl outmaneuvered him with preparation. She came with a plan. She knew what he was, and she came ready. The third time, the weapon was the hands of Heracles. The 12th and final labor of Heracles, the capstone of the entire series, the task designed to be impossible, was to descend into the underworld, confront Cerberus, and bring him alive to the surface world. Hades himself, according to Apollodorus in the Bibliotheca, granted permission on one condition. Heracles could take Cerberus, but only if he subdued him without weapons. No club, no arrows, nothing but strength and will. Heracles descended with empty hands. Armored only in the hide of the Nemean lion, itself impenetrable to any blade, he moved through the darkness of the underworld toward the gate and seized Cerberus by the throats. What followed shook the dark. The hound's serpent tail struck at the lion skin again and again, finding no purchase. The vipers of his mane writhed and drove their fangs into every exposed inch of Heracles' flesh. 3 sets of jaws snapped at the air as Cerberus twisted and lunged, bringing the full force of his ancient immortal nature against the arms locked around his necks. Heracles planted his feet in the stone of the underworld, shortened his grip, and held. He did not let go. He did not yield. He squeezed until the thrashing slowed, until the great heads drooped, until Cerberus, the hound of Hades, the son of Typhon, the guardian of the boundary between all things living and all things dead, went still beneath his hands and submitted, not died, submitted. Heracles dragged him through the cave at Tainarum on the southern tip of the Peloponnese, the entrance to the underworld the Greeks identified in the physical landscape, and hauled him blinking into the sunlight of the living world. The creature who had never seen the sun, who existed entirely as a function of the dark and the permanent and the irreversible, stood exposed in a world he was never meant to occupy. He was shown to Eurystheus, the king who had assigned the labours, who reportedly hid in a storage jar at the sight of him. Then Heracles returned Cerberus to the underworld. He went back. That detail, the return, is as important as the dragging out. The labour was not to destroy Cerberus. It was to prove that Heracles could move him. The boundary was demonstrated to be penetrable by a hero of sufficient stature. And then it was restored. Cerberus returned to his post. The dead remained dead. The cosmos held. The Cerberus tradition is rich and internally inconsistent in ways worth examining carefully. Hesiod in the Theogony gives him 50 heads, a number representing overwhelming innumerable force rather than a literal count, and describes his behavior with precision. He fawns on those who enter and devours those he catches attempting to leave. The canonical 3 heads appear to have stabilized in later tradition, though Pindar in his second Pythian ode references him with 100 heads. 3 became the standard adopted by Apollodorus, Virgil, and the visual tradition in Greek and Roman art. His precise location within the underworld varies across sources. Some place him at the banks of the Styx, others at the gates of Hades proper. The distinction matters less than the function. He marks the point of no return. The Orpheus episode draws on multiple Greek lyric sources, including fragments of Simonides and Ibycus, before its fullest literary treatment in Ovid's Metamorphoses and Virgil's Georgics. The detail that Eurydice was bitten while fleeing the shepherd Aristeus comes from Virgil's Georgics alone. In Ovid's Metamorphoses, Eurydice is simply walking when she is bitten. There is no pursuer. The versions are independent retellings rather than a unified tradition. The Heracles labour is attested in Apollodorus, Bibliotheca 2.5.12, in Diodorus Siculus, and in references in Pindar. The condition that he used no weapons comes from Apollodorus. The cave at Tainarum as the entry point is mentioned by multiple ancient authors, including Pausanias. The Aeneas passage is Roman rather than Greek in origin, Virgil's Aeneid Book 6, but draws on genuine Greek underworld tradition and belongs in any complete account of the Cerberus myth. The Greeks built Cerberus at the boundary not because they feared death, but because they feared its reversal. A world in which the dead could return is a world without consequence, without finality, without the weight that makes living choices matter. Cerberus is not there to punish the living for their curiosity. He is there because the dead staying dead is the foundation on which everything else, love, loss, heroism, grief, time itself, is constructed. The three exceptions to his rule are not loopholes. They are tests of what survives death. Music survives it. Orpheus proved that grief expressed as beauty can reach even into permanent darkness. Wisdom survives it. The Sibyl proved that preparation and knowledge can navigate even the final threshold. And extraordinary human force survives it. Heracles proved that the hero, at the full extension of his power, can briefly move what was meant to be immovable. But all three went back. The boundary held, the rule endured. Cerberus returned to his post at the edge of everything, turned his three heads toward the dark, and waited for the next arrival who might be foolish enough to try to leave. He is still waiting. If you want to go deeper into the ancient world, Aeonkeep Mythology ebooks explore these ancient myths in full, the stories, the gods, and the worlds that shaped them. You'll find the link in the description. This legend has been told. Subscribe and return to Aeonkeep. More legends await.